was July of 1990. Nintendo released their latest puzzle game on the Famicom and Game Boy in Japan. 3 months later, it would reach North America. The game focused on eradicating viruses with vitamin capsules, and tossing those capsules was none other than Nintendo's flagship mascot, with the medical degree. Gaming Delight presents its retrospective on Dr. Mario. Giving Mario his own puzzle game seemed like a good course of action for Nintendo. They had great success with their Donkey Kong and Mario Bros. Arcade games, as well as the original Super Mario Bros. Games on the Famicom/Nintendo Entertainment System, along with the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, the best-selling game on the Famicom Disk System add-on. And fans were anticipating the release of the Super Famicom, along with a Super Mario game as a launch title. Mario also made his way to the Game Boy through a launch title, Super Mario Land. Both the system and the game released in April of 1989 in Japan and 3 months later in North America. It went on to sell over 18 million copies. A puzzle game seemed like the next option. Most likely, Nintendo wanted to capitalize on the success of Tetris, an addictive puzzle game created by Alexei Pajitnov at the Russian Academy of Sciences in 1985. Tetris got ported to the Famicom by Bulletproof Software and was released in Japan by the end of 1988. Atari Games, under their subsidiary Tengen, released an unlicensed version of Tetris in 1989, but because of licensing issues, Nintendo had obtained the home console and handheld rights to Tetris, forcing Atari Games to pull their version of Tetris from the market and destroy their unsold stock. On the day of the Game Boy's launch in North America, Tetris was released for the system as the bundled game. It was a resounding success. In November, Nintendo released their own version of Tetris on the NES. It too was successful, despite it being single-player only. The new puzzle game was produced by Gunpei Yokoi, head of Research and Development 1 and creator of the Game & Watch and the Game Boy. He was also familiar with Mario, having assisted Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto in developing Donkey Kong and Mario Bros. Yokoi also produced several R&D 1 games, including Metroid and Kid Icarus. Takehiro Harada, who had previously programmed for Super Mario Land, was named the designer. Composing the music was Hirokazu Tanaka, who had a long history of programming sound effects and music for Nintendo games. In 1989, the game was given the working title Virus, with Mario tossing pills at the viruses. The prototype's code was based on Nintendo's version of Tetris on the NES. As you can see in these photos, Mario looks slightly different in the early stages. He also lacked a stethoscope and sported white shoes rather than the brown ones he usually wears. The prototype was mostly silent. Another prototype was built in February of 1990, which, among other improvements, fully utilized the MMC-1 chip. Eventually, the game was touched up even further, and it was given a new title, Dr. Mario. It fit perfectly with Mario's doctor getup, and it would surely be highly marketable, considering the success of Super Mario Bros. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
Dad, look, here's all the Nintendo. You said you'd get me Game Boy.
I said I'd think about it.
Well...
Okay, you can have it.
Thanks. Dad, I just want you to know, you and Mom can play with it whenever you want.
You're spoiling me.
Nintendo. It's for breakfast now. Nintendo. It's a cereal. Wow. Nintendo. Super Mario Chunks. Nintendo. In a fruit-flavored crunch. Nintendo. Here's Zelda too. Nintendo. It's very good news. Nintendo. You just can't lose. Nintendo cereal system is a super part of this nutritious breakfast. Nintendo. 2 cereals in 1. Wow.
Here's the gameplay. Upon boot up, there are 2 options, single player and 2 player. Let's check out the single-player game. You get to choose a level from which to start between 0 and 20. Then you choose one of 3 speeds, and one of 2 soundtrack options, or no music at all. There's a medicine bottle occupied by a series of viruses of 3 colors. In the NES version, they're red, yellow, and blue. In the Game Boy version, they're black, gray, and white. No surprise there. Mario tosses colored medicinal capsules. Some have 1 full color, and some have 1 color on either side. Using the A and B buttons, you can rotate the capsule clockwise or counterclockwise, and using the D-pad, shift it left or right, or drop it down swiftly. Match up at least 4 of the same color, and those of that color will disappear, leaving any unsupported capsules to fall. Every time a virus disappears, you'll be awarded points. Once all viruses are cleared out, you move on to the next level. A good way to score extra points is to use the falling capsules to your advantage after clearing out a virus. Once those falling capsules wipe out another virus, more points are awarded. The more viruses you destroy at once, the more points you score. Scoring systems are the same in both the NES version and the Game Boy version. After clearing every 5th level up to 20, a cutscene is shown with the viruses sitting on a tree in the NES version or underwater in the Game Boy version. If you clear level 20 at high speed, the cutscene will show a UFO abducting the viruses. In the 2-player game, the main goal of the game is to be the first to wipe out all their viruses. The first player to win 3 rounds wins the match. All in all, in many ways, Dr. Mario kind of reminds you of Sega's very own puzzle game, Columns. Among the few gameplay differences, Columns has diagonal matching and allows for at least 3 of the same jewel. Dr. Mario doesn't have diagonal matching and allows for at least 4 of the same colored pill sides and/or viruses. Now, aside from the lack of color, the Game Boy version of Dr. Mario also has a few differences from the NES, namely in sounds and music. In the NES version, the music that plays when a combo is made is only available in the 2-player game. The Game Boy version added the combo music to the single-player game, along with a third for when at least 4 combos were made. This combo tune sounds similar to the Superstar theme in Super Mario Bros. Speaking of music, if you listen closely after clearing the 2-player mode, you'll hear a tune almost similar to Surfin' Safari by the Beach Boys. And the chain music also references Frere Jacques for 2 combo chains, and for 3 combo chains, Flo Walzer, or Flea Waltz, a simple piano piece which was known in Japan as Neko Funjata.
Neko funjatta, neko funjatta, neko funzukechattara hikaita. The kitty scratched me, the kitty scratched me, stepped on the kitty, scared kitty scratched me, see.
And here's a neat tip. Tired of getting up to press that reset button on your NES? Well, the controller has you covered. If you feel like you can't clear a stage in Dr. Mario, simply simultaneously press Start, select B and A, and the game automatically resets. Why couldn't more NES games have this feature? On July 27, 1990, Dr. Mario was released on the Famicom and the Game Boy in Japan. It went on to sell over 2 million copies for the Game Boy and over 1.5 million for the Famicom.
Famicom ソフト、ドクターマリオ、ゲームボーイも同時発売。
Next stop, North America. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
I called the witch doctor, he told me what to do. He said, ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, tang-tang, walla-walla bing-bang.
That means play Dr. Mario on Game Boy or NES.
Ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. I beat the witch doctor, and this is what he said. He said, ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. Ooh-ee, ah-ah. and then he struck my head.
Yes, I'm the Nintendo King! Ha! I'm the Nintendo Queen.
Now inside specially marked bags of Chips Ahoy and Oreo cookies, there's a game card and a chance to win one of 10 trips to watch the Nintendo World Championships.
Game cards? They were just here.
To see if you win a free trip, simply scratch the game card. Or for a free card, write Game Card Request, Box 9066, Clinton, Iowa 52736.
I wonder what happened to those game cards.
More cookies, sir?
In June of 1990, at the Summer Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, Nintendo was the center of attention. Over 125 new games for the NES and Game Boy were previewed at the show. Among the NES games, Final Fantasy, the first installment of Square's epic series of role-playing games, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, a port of Konami's arcade beat-em-up starring the pizza-loving reptiles, the third installment of Capcom's Mega Man series, Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, the latest in Konami's Dracula-based series, and Nintendo's latest puzzle game, Dr. Mario. The show was even covered in issue 13 of Electronic Gaming Monthly. In August of 1990, Dr. Mario made its North American debut as a Versus System arcade cabinet and as part of the Play Choice 10. Most likely, this was Nintendo of America's way of hyping up the game's home release, similar to what was done for Super Mario Bros. 3 the previous summer.
Killer game from Nintendo. Dr. Mario, wow. But it ain't what you think. You get to zap these viruses. And with 2 players, you can actually trash the other guy. Remember, kids, try this at home. Hey, you can get it for Game Boy, too.
Dr. Mario would see a home release in North America in October for both the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Game Boy, 3 months after its Japanese release date. And within 6 weeks, 2.5 million copies were sold in the region. All in all, the game wound up selling a total of over 10 million copies worldwide. The Game Boy version sold over 5.3 million copies, and the NES version sold over 4.8 million. The game also received fair reviews all over. Issue 16 of Electronic Gaming Monthly gave the Game Boy version 23 out of 40. Dr. Mario graced the cover of issue 18 of Nintendo Power. Aside from the arcade ports, Dr. Mario also saw numerous ports and remakes on Nintendo platforms. In 1994, Nintendo released Tetris and Dr. Mario on the Super Nintendo, an enhanced remake of the 2 puzzle games. The NES version saw 2 re-releases on the Game Boy Advance, as a standalone game in the classic NES series, and as part of Dr. Mario and Puzzle League. It was also released on the Wii U Virtual Console and Nintendo Switch Online service. The Game Boy version was also released on the 3DS Virtual Console and Nintendo Switch Online. The success of Dr. Mario also led to follow-ups. In 2001, Nintendo released Dr. Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64, with more modes, and also featuring Wario and characters from the Wario Land series alongside Mario. It was later ported to the GameCube as part of the Japan-exclusive game, Nintendo Puzzle Collection. In 2008, Dr. Mario Online RX was released on WiiWare. This game supported Wi-Fi connectivity. Later that year, Dr. Mario Express hit DSiWare for the Nintendo DSi, but this one lacked multiplayer. At the end of 2013, Dr. Luigi was released as a download-only title for the Wii U. The main difference from Dr. Mario, Mario was replaced with Luigi. In 2015, both brothers carried their medicinal services over to Dr. Mario Miracle Cure on the 3DS. This would be, for the time being, the last new Dr. Mario game released on a Nintendo console. The next game, Dr. Mario World, was released in 2019 as a mobile game for iOS and Android. 2 years later, the game was shut down, and there's no concrete details as to why. Although we haven't seen a new Dr. Mario game in nearly a decade, the original game's legacy lives on. It was referenced in the Super Smash Bros., Brain Age, WarioWare, and Mario & Luigi series. Mario also got an amiibo in his Doctor gear. Dr. Mario was also featured as a side event in the Classic Tetris World Championships. Gaming Delight's Chronicles of Mario will return in a moment.
Your sister gave you the mumps. Your brother gave you the flu. Your best friend gave you chicken pox. It's payback time with help from Dr. Mario. Go head-to-head on NES or link up on Game Boy. Then contaminate, exterminate, and spread the viruses. When you score, you infect your opponent. Make them sweat, run a fever, get the chills. Dr. Mario. With 2 players, it's germ warfare.
Can I play?
Sure. Today are Mario and Luigi. We're gonna learn some inside tricks to Super Mario Bros. 3, but first, this commercial break.
Six great issues plus 6 free strategy guides on a hot new game. That's twice the power for still $15. Wow! Call now. Get the power. And we're back. Go ahead, caller.
How do I get from World 3 to World...
Don't ask me.
Call for Nintendo Power. Operators are standing by and the call is free. Subscribe now and get the first strategy guide. 84 pages of tips on Super Mario Bros. 3. You'll warp through worlds faster than you can say spaghetti and meatballs. So make the call already.
Overall, folks, Dr. Mario is one of the coolest puzzle games on the NES and the Game Boy. But don't just take my word for it. Here's a fellow YouTuber who knows there's more to Dr. Mario than meets the eye.
How are you feeling? You got John Riggs here. My story about Dr. Mario. I have a couple of them, and they both involve my dad, actually. What happened once was we decided to go out to eat, or my dad decided, hey, I found this restaurant in town, let's all go there. And it was during a time like when I was in middle school where I wasn't really into like fine dining or fancy restaurants and all that. Just give me McDonald's, give me my chicken nuggets, I'm good. Well, we go to this place and my dad along the way says, well, if you don't like the menu, I'll just give you a couple of bucks. And then across the street there was a McDonald's as part of our Yakima Mall. So we go there, I'm just like, sorry, I'd rather go to McDonald's. It's all right, you know, he gives me like 10 bucks or whatever. I go to McDonald's, get my chicken McNuggets, and then I go to the arcade, of course, with the change. And that was the first time I ever saw Dr. Mario. Never heard of Dr. Mario. It wasn't in any Nintendo Powers at the time, nothing. Because all of a sudden I was like, where did this puzzle game come from? It's Mario. It's definitely Mario, but it's this game called Dr. Mario, and it's a puzzle game, and I loved Tetris at the time. So I fell in love with it the first time I played it, and I was like, that's great. Then fast forward to a couple of weeks later, then Nintendo Power comes out, and then it talks about Dr. Mario. I was like, oh, I just played this game in the arcade, cool. And then it came out shortly thereafter on store shelves where you could purchase it. And again, it was during a time where I didn't just get like new games all the time. I rented a lot of games, but you know, if I was gonna get a game for myself at the time, it was like one on my birthday, one on Christmas, that's it. But for some reason, with Dr. Mario, my dad knew about it and ended up buying it for me as a for no reason, then here's Dr. Mario for you. And he used to hide the games too. He would always buy a game for me and then hide it somewhere. And sometimes it would be like on a bookshelf or something in our house. And I wouldn't see it for like a week or two, probably. It's just been sitting there until I finally find it, and he didn't care. You know, he didn't care if I play the game immediately or not. So that was half the fun. But when he bought that game, he put it in my blanket, so when I pulled the sheets off to go to bed, there's Dr. Mario, and then I ended up not going to bed at a decent time that night because I immediately started playing Dr. Mario for a while. And from there, I think of those fond memories, especially now that my dad's not with us anymore. I think of those fond memories, and it makes me love Dr. Mario just that much more. But Dr. Mario holds a true place in my heart. I'm not very good at it by any stretch of the imagination, but man, I love that game.
Thanks, John. In my boyhood, I never actually got to experience Dr. Mario for myself until I found a bootleg multicard for my Game Boy in the summer of 2002. Dr. Mario was among the games. It became my favorite game on that bootleg. Sadly, I no longer have that card, but I was able to experience the NES version on the NES Classic Edition when I got it in 2016. Now I have legitimate copies of both versions of the game, one for the NES, one for the Game Boy, both complete. Real cheap. So which one do I prefer? Well, It's hard to say. I mean, this one has more music and this one has more color. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks again for watching Gaming Delight. Until next time, happy gaming!